Hello, everybody. This is Rick Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government. We are on Friday before the Tuesday election, 4 days until what Joe Biden would term a battle for the soul of America has the clash, the 2022 clash um, gets settled. And while we're talking, we're going to focus a little bit on what the various things that are happening um, after the election in terms of the voter integrity stuff and anything that's going on that's strange. May talk a little bit about that on Tuesday or Wednesday. But for today, I just want to go and just give you the update that we've been trying to do. We've been giving you on a regular basis, so you know kind of what's going on. And this is the this is the big news. The big news is that this Real Clear Politics, which attempts to take a look at all the polls and project what's going to happen in these races and recognize they're fallible, but it's the best kind of resource we have to kind of congregate information from a nonpartisan source. Real Clear Politics in the U.S. Senate battle now has 48 seats leaning Republican, 44 seats leaning Democrat, 8 seats as toss-ups. And the interesting thing is the seats that were lean Democrat have collapsed over to toss-up. Democrat seats were lean Democrat have collapsed over to toss-ups. And no Republican seats have moved from lean GOP to toss-up. Tells you the direction that things are moving. And it's not different than what you and I are feeling, what you and I are seeing out there, are hearing from people, but it's a confirmation of that. The race that's just moved into the toss-up category is Colorado, where the incumbent Senator Bennett, is now within margin of error for being defeated in the state of Colorado, which has been a very purple, if not dark purple, if not blue, state for the past 10 years. There's a Colorado project that the Democrats did that started in the 2000s, which was designed to turn Colorado blue. And they engaged in a massive voter registration project and an indoctrination project, and it worked over a period of years. So it is so Colorado is a difficult state for us. Colorado right now, the Senate race is a toss-up. Interestingly, the candidate from Colorado, the Republican candidate, has said is a never Trumper, or at least an anti-Trumper, who Donald Trump refused to endorse. Ron DeSantis did endorse him, causing President Trump to question DeSantis' political acumen and get a little public spat between the two of them. But that is a race that is now looking still. Truth be told, on election day, I will not be surprised if Bennett wins. But the fact is, it's trending in the Republican direction. It looks like a toss-up. Other Senate races, Arizona, Mark Kelly, who has really been a Teflon kind of guy because as an astronaut and kind of looked as a little bit of hero. His wife, Gabby Giffords, was a member of Congress who was shot by a communist, but they blamed Sarah Palin. So he's kind of really been the one guy who's been difficult to tie to Biden, even though he's voted with Biden 100% of the time. But he runs kind of the independent maverick kind of swagger without actually having to deliver on it. That race is finally in the polls, is now showing even between Kelly and Masters, and is trending towards the Republican Masters. And Real Clear is projecting that Masters will win that race, the Republican, but the polls are finally showing that race is now dead even. I've heard from some people who do polling in Arizona that it's a dogfight. Every vote counts, but they believe that Masters will win. and certainly Real Clear Politics does. That would be a pickup for the Republicans. Raphael Warnock in Georgia, who Herschel Walker is running against. Herschel Walker was pretty much dead in the water, and he went on. He debated Warnock, and he proved that he was very adept at discussing the issues, and it gave people permission to vote for him. Yeah, he could be a good senator. So that is and he is now ahead of Warnock, outside the margin for error. And in fact, Chuck Schumer, the Democrat Senate Majority Leader, was caught on mic telling Joe Biden that Georgia didn't look good for them at all, basically letting the president know that they were going to lose Georgia. Now everything's pending, people voting, people going out. And the question in Georgia is, will Herschel Walker, they have a runoff system. So if Herschel Walker doesn't get 50% plus one of the votes, there'll be a runoff between him and the second candidate, which would be Warnock. And if you remember from 2 years ago, the Republicans lost control of the Senate based upon the two runoffs in Georgia, where the Republicans lost both of those runoffs. And as a result, the Democrats reached the magic number of 50 that they needed to be able to have Kamala Harris break ties. So a runoff is very unpredictable, but it appears there is a reasonable chance that Herschel Walker wins it outright, although most people in DC are predicting a runoff. In New Hampshire, Maggie Hassan, people basically weren't paying any attention to this race. And I've been saying for 3, 4, 5 months that the Republican can win in New Hampshire if people invested in the state. Well, now Don Bolduc is ahead in New Hampshire. The Republican is ahead in New Hampshire. I believe he will win. And because truthfully, Hassan's support has collapsed. And there's a saying that incumbents don't increase their margins. They get what they're going to get. And Maggie Hassan is in a state where she is getting, I need to get that. She was at 45%, and she's not moved off that 45%. And, so as the undecided voters move towards the challenger candidate, in this case, Republican Bolduc, it is that typically what happens is late movers go overwhelmingly toward the party that's got momentum, and B, the challenger. And as a result, the Republicans have the momentum, and they happen to be the challenger, which puts Hassan in great danger. And many people are projecting that she will lose, but that will be an early state for you to watch. New Hampshire knows how to count their votes, unlike places like Pennsylvania, which is going to take like days. But so New Hampshire, you're going to see really early what's happening in that state. And while the presidential in 2016, they were Donald Trump was ahead for most of the night, and very late, like in 11, 12 o'clock, they finally called New Hampshire for Hillary Clinton because the late votes that were counted turned out to be for Clinton. But but by and large, they're able to count the votes pretty fast there. And so you should have a pretty good first indicator state of what's going on and what the national trend is. In Nevada, and I want to talk about Nevada in particular because Nevada has implications. Before I get off New Hampshire, Republicans were not expected to pick up a House seat in New Hampshire, and now seems very likely that a 25-year-old woman who was in the Trump administration, Karen Leavitt, is going to win New Hampshire 1. She certainly appears to be ahead of the polls, and as a result, she's just we're going to end up having a chance where I'm trying to get back to where I am, a chance to have a Republican representative from there who will be 26 when she gets sworn in on January 3, but she isn't 20. Most of this campaign, she's 25. I don't know when her birthday is, but bottom line is a young woman who's going to be has a real chance of being in the House. Now, let me talk to you about what's going on, what the actual dynamics are, because these are why the Republicans are winning. A couple of things. I was on a call with a pollster today. What the pollster said was young voters have become disenchanted with the Democrats based on inflation, based on war stuff. Young voters are sitting there saying, wait a second, this isn't what I thought it was. I can't buy a house. I can't do any of these things. And they've become, so Gen Zs and millennials are flipping on the Democrats. And so in New Hampshire, Don Baldock is leading with Gen Zs and millennials. He's actually losing with seniors. So you've got this weird upside down world because Republicans used to do not well with young people and do better with older people. Well, in upside down world, Baldock's doing well with younger people and is winning every age demographic up to the age of 65, and 65 plus he's losing. So that's kind of a weird, like I said, it's upside down world from how it usually works. But the reason that this pollster said that was occurring is very simple. The economy is having a real impact on young people and their expectations for the future. They believe that the policies by Biden are responsible for the economic distress they're feeling, the inflation they're seeing, the high interest rates that have resulted. And as a result, and they don't believe the Democrats have any plan to deal with it. So this may be a temporary shift, but it is a shift, and it's an important one. Secondly, in states like Nevada, it's not just young people, but Hispanics. This pollster is predicting that Hispanics are going to vote in favor, on a majority, in favor of the Republican candidate, Adam Laxalt, over Macio Cortez, who is the current senator. And so if Hispanics in Nevada are voting in a majority for Republican candidates, it completely blows up the Democrat coalition. It destroys their assumptions in map making. And remember, we just redrew the congressional maps, and the Democrats made assumptions about how Hispanics were going to vote in terms of the seats they were drawing for Democrats, or to be competitive so the Democrats could win. And if Hispanic voters are voting even 45% for Republicans, at that point, they've basically, their own map is going to mess them up. And that is going to be functionally play a large role in why America gets 45 to 50 Republican House members rather than 20 to 25. So so Hispanics are a key element here. And I didn't believe this when I was reading it. I've been around the block enough to see all these times when they say, oh, we're going to get blank number of, record number of Hispanic votes, et cetera, and then it never turns out. Well, I've got too many people telling me that this is real, and it's showing up in the polls. It's showing up in the state polls. So so Hispanics, and get this, it's particularly true in border areas. It's particularly true in border areas because Hispanics who are established, who are citizens, are sitting there and they're seeing what's happening, and they're seeing what they've fought for, the stake that they've placed in America being threatened. And and as a result, they're saying, why do we have an open border? What's going on here? And so the Democrats, once again, trapped in their own kind of racial dynamic, not doing what's best for America, but trying to do race-based policy, thought that the open border was going to be a strong issue with Hispanics, because Hispanic activists have been pushing for it because they want to have some new members because the established Hispanic community is rejecting them. So they need some new people to have as their activist base, and the best people to exploit are people who are new. So if that is in fact what is happening, you're going to see Nevada flip, and it won't be close. In fact, you may see the Democrats lose every congressional race in Nevada. Now, once again, I think they're going to hold at least one of the congressional seats in Nevada, but they can lose. But even losing 3 out of 4 is a big deal because the Democrats have held 3 out of 4 for at least the last decade. So that's a shift a shift based upon voter patterns. The other voter pattern that's shifting is suburban women. Suburban women, the Democrats have spent enormous energy trying to flip suburban women, and they were successful. In 2020, suburban women, now Trump did okay with women. He didn't do markedly worse with women, but many people on the Republican side believe that suburban women were being solidified based on attacks on Trump, and that was a coalition that we were going to have a hard time bringing back. The fact of the matter is, the crime issue has become the number one issue with people, with suburban women: crime and inflation, economy. Having to go to the grocery store and seeing prices go up, and the fact that people are afraid to go out on the streets are big issues, and so that has become a meaningful wedge that has kind of driven conservative women or suburban women back to where they were 10 years ago, being largely supportive of the Republican candidates. This is particularly reflective in women who are independent and aren't Republican or Democrat, who are up for grabs. And it is so to speak, and it is and as a result, you have a flip of undecideds who are saying the Democrats have made my streets unsafe. The Democrats have made it so my children aren't safe in school. And the Democrats have made it so the prices have gone up and I can't afford to drive the car. The cost of driving my minivan is too high, and they're mad about it. And that should be. And so that's where you're seeing this massive shift. And I'm not trivializing it on the minivan thing. I think the moms issue is something that the left is they've overplayed the issue with the transgender. They've overplayed the issue with CRT in schools. They've overplayed the issue with the entire sex ed thing they've been doing. And as a result, and the moms who've woken up and say, wait a second, I now know what you're doing to my kid in school. I don't like it. I don't like my school to be, I want my school to be education, not indoctrination. Those women are the ones who become the activists. They're the ones who are driving the boat. And truthfully, this is a true grassroots movement. And for Joe Biden, who worries about democracy, rest assured, the moms that have stood up and said no to school boards, the moms who stood up and said no to CRT curriculums, the moms who have stood up and fought for their children, that's called democracy, my friend. That's what we're supposed to do. And for Joe Biden, who's so worried about threat to democracy, he needs to realize that he's the threat to democracy, because he's the one who sicked the DOJ, Department of Justice, on moms and dads who in school board meetings said, you will not indoctrinate my children. You will not expose my children to pornography. You will not do this. And after doing that, the DOJ said, Department of Justice said, no, we're going to start investigating you, and we're going to spend time, energy, and effort trying to track down you. That's being rejected right now. This is the democracy that Joe Biden so desperately wants everybody to believe is under attack. Bottom line for this, right now, my prediction is that the Republicans will end up with 54 senators, and they will end up on the House side with between 245 and 250 House seats. The reason I'm saying that is because there's districts that are put in the category of likely Democrat right now, likely Democrat, where I know, based upon just the district and the people in the campaign, I know that those districts are flat toss-ups. What's more, I know that places like Baltimore City, Philadelphia, other strongholds where the Democrats turn out a lot of votes, that the early voting on those cities is significantly down, and their model is totally built on early voting. Their whole model is they've told people during COVID it was unsafe to go to the polling places, and what's breaking out now? A really bad flu. And so people who've been indoctrinated into being afraid to be in groups and the like, who don't vote early, are much less likely to go to the polling place on Tuesday to vote for people who they don't, so they can continue to have high inflation. So folks, the map is falling right. But I'm going to tell you that the worst thing that can happen is to take things for granted, because the difference between having 225 to 230 Republicans in the House and having 245 to 250 Republicans in the House is enormous. You can get stuff done in terms of fighting for cutting the budget, fighting for policy writers to prevent regulations that are pushing a transgender agenda into the public schools coming out of the Department of Education. You can stop those things through the funding mechanisms by simply telling Joe Biden, we will not allow any dollars to be spent on that regulation. And Joe Biden will have a choice of whether, and we'll have to fight it out in the Senate, and no matter how many votes we get in the Senate. But if the House is firm, and the House is solid, and they're fighting on principle, we have a chance to win some of those issues in the funding process. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where holding people accountable. That's where, which is going to be the campaign we're starting on Wednesday, is hold them accountable campaign. And we're going to need every one of you to help us do that. Because we are going to it's not enough to win on November 8th. We have to win November 9th and November 10th. And through the next 2 years, we have to win to be able to make certain that people don't decide that they're going to go back to business as usual, Washington, D.C., but instead will keep the faith that they're making, keep their promises, basically remind them of what's in their campaign brochures that they stand for, and not allow them to do the business of Washington, D.C., rather than the business of the people who they represent. So those are my predictions. I'm going to come back on probably on Tuesday, and I may do something during the day, and then I'm hoping to be able to do something during when they're doing the evening election counting to talk to you about it. But one of the things I want you to all include is, this is about you. We have to have every single person who's watching let as many of your friends and to know they have to vote. Just encourage them. Early voting is basically over. Now they have to show up at the polls. If you need to drive people to the polls, do it. Do whatever you have to do to get people to the polls. It doesn't matter if you're in a safe Republican district or a safe Democrat district or a toss-up district or a lean district. The bottom line is, we need people to go to the polls who are going to vote. So there is a mandate. And this is now the opportunity to create a mandate to hold Joe Biden accountable. One other thing I learned in the pollster interview was about 5% of the people who were voting Republican were voting because they wanted a check and balance on the Biden administration, on Pelosi, on Schumer. So it was less. It was more about saying we don't want the Biden to run through things unimpeded, and so and that's why this pollster contended that while the generic ballot on Real Clear Politics shows about 3%, that the reality is we're probably at an 8% a generic advantage for Republican Democrat, and the reason for that is that generic ballot doesn't reflect people who are, first of all, quiet voters, but secondly, all the people who are voting late, are late deciders, are flipping Republican because it's the alternative. It's the only alternative to the status quo, and as a result, he thinks that you're going to end up, the real ballot when the day is over will be a 6 to 8% Republican advantage. And folks, that means the 45 to 50 prediction comes true. One last thought. I think we're going to get to 54 in the Senate in terms of freedom lovers. We once again have to hold them accountable. But I think we're going to get to 54, possibly 55 or 56. If Colorado and Washington State come through, you can get to 56. That would be astonishing, but possible. The bottom line on it is there is a lot of work to be done. This is not an election where we can just say, okay, we did our job. November 8th is here. We've done our job. And that's one of the reasons Americans for Limited Government is here, because we spend our time fighting for freedom 24/7, 365. And so the fight only begins on November 9, because we have to be successful in stopping a rubber stamping of the Biden budgets through the spending bill that's going to come up in December. We have to stop that. They have to push that forward to make it so the Republican chairman get to write that bill, not the Democrats. So there's going to be a lot of fights that we're going to have to do in the so-called lame duck session. And we're going to need you holding an oar and pulling as hard as possible with us in order to win those fights. With that, I'm going to take a couple of these comments. Michael Joan Borst. I'll definitely be there taking a bunch of first-time voters with me. Also, we'll all be voting right across the board. Now, Michael, that's exactly what I'm talking. Thank you very much. That is exactly what people need to do. And if you don't have, and the other thing you can do is this weekend, tomorrow, right now, call a local campaign and say, how can I help you get out the vote on Tuesday? And they might say, hey, do you have 4 hours tomorrow on Saturday where you can go around, knock on doors for people who are low propensity voters who should vote for us if they come out, and encourage them to come out to vote? That would be that's a way to help. It could be, show up at the polling place and talk to people who are walking up and see if they need any help in figuring out what's going on. There's lots of different ways to help. Your local campaigns can help you on that. So I would, at any level of government, and school board races are as important as congressional races. So any campaign that you're interested in, volunteer. Geraldine Krebke, I'm voting red all the way. My family is voting all red. Their friends are voting red all the way. Geraldine, great. And I just encourage you once again, take that enthusiasm and share it with all, anybody on your contact list. And if you know anybody in some of the target states, please let them know. But because the Democrats are going to get higher intent. They're in a lot of places, they're going to be very low intensity turnout where there's not actually a battlefield on the statewide level. But in some of those states like Georgia and Nevada and Arizona, the Democrats are going to come out with more intensity. I think the Republicans will beat them, but ultimately they're not going to just be laying down. And so it's really important for us to bolster those states with anybody we know in those states, and encouraging them to make certain that they do get out to vote. Thank you, Geraldine, for your efforts. When will California issue a ban on hammers? I don't know. We'll have to ask. I guess we're gonna have to ask MC about that. We have to pray for our country about Republican. Mary Jane, I think that is a perfect place for us to end. God's in control. He is sovereign. We just try to do his will. And yes, our country needs to become a blessing, be a blessed place again. We used to sing God Bless America and think nothing of it, which was actually a song asking for God's blessing. It wasn't just an anthem or a need song to sing. It was a song acknowledging the need for God's blessing. Well, we need God's blessing now more than ever. And we need to pray for our lawmakers. We need to pray for the people who are working so hard to get people elected. And quite honestly, we need to pray for the people who don't agree with us, that they will come into God's wisdom and see the light. And I'm not going to go around saying, oh, gee whiz, God's Republican, because he's not. Okay, let's just be honest. He's not. God is truth. He is life. He is light. And of course, that's how Jesus described himself. And that is ultimately what the thing that matters, is that our country turn its eyes back to God and away from the selfish kind of ignorance that has pervaded over the last, well, for many, many years. And so that is our, yes, that is our prayer. And so keep praying for our country, pray for those elected officials, and pray to make certain that people see God's hand, God's positive hand working in this country, as opposed to chafing against it. And with that, Mary Jane, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for that end. We should always remember that prayer matters much more than virtually anything else we do, because everything we get, everything we do, every blessing comes from God, the sovereign. And without that, we are just, it's really just a scramble of who gets what resource, and who can take what from who. And government is more than a scramble over who gets to use the point of the gun, the government's point of the gun, to take stuff from other people and distribute it to their friends. Government needs to be the rule of the law has to fail. The government has to be a neutral arbiter. Government needs to be something that promotes freedom and allows freedom to thrive rather than thwarting it. And government needs to be something where people can be exposed to and exercise their religion freely without government intervention. And that is the First Amendment, but it's something that's dramatically under attack. So this election matters. And I just thank you, every one of you, for sticking on this thing. And we will talk to you on Monday or Tuesday, maybe Monday, but probably Tuesday. With that, I will sign off. This is Rick Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government. Go out and volunteer for a campaign this weekend. Sign up to help on Tuesday. Sign up to help on Monday. We got a 4-day sprint. Let's run the race. Take care and God bless.